Hello, welcome everyone to another episode of Discussing Deep Things with Scott Killaby. Welcome, Scott.
Welcome.
Mihai Algiu. Yeah, it's in the series of Psychotherapy and Non-Duality, where we are discussing topics on the umbrella of the need of integrating spiritual awakening work, presence, self-inquiry with processing of our subconscious, traumas, repression, limiting core beliefs, and the need of thorough exploration of these both two avenues to ensure more chances for happiness, I guess. So, the topic for today, I thought we haven't touched upon that. And I think it's important. It was important in my life to clarify this, and I got into serious stuckness because I was confused and naive and ignorant about this issue. Okay, so maybe we'll throw them all together like a shotgun and just we see what comes. So the teacher, there's the aspirant, the seeker. Seeker, I don't know, I have suffering, they say I'm asleep, according based on the potential that's available. So the seeker is seeking, and then in these many traditions, like non-dual, Advaita, fourth way, devotional, that it's important to the role of the teacher. The teacher is crucial. It's not going to work so well from books or from YouTube, and kind of encountering a teacher will be like a quickening or like a necessary ingredient. So in my life, I totally believe that, and I believe it's true. Like if I want to be a good tennis player, or I want to be a good drummer, I want to be a good swordsman or a computer programmer, it would be nice to study teaching from someone who knows, right? They know, they have it, they have experience, knowledge, being, and so for exposure with them to help me cover the territory. So that's kind of obvious and makes sense. However, it also seems like what helped me a lot was when I encountered the teachings of David Hawkins. He was warning seekers that, hey, you guys are like gullible and naive and innocent. So you need to be very careful when you choose your teacher, because there are many teachers out there. Like there can be, and he was saying you don't even need an enlightened teacher. I mean, it's great. You can have an enlightened teacher, that's wonderful, but you can have like an honest teacher who is wiser than you. That will be very helpful. You can have what's called somebody who had some type of awakening or spiritual transformation, and then he fell prey to some temptations of power, sex, power over people, holy sex, having sex with the followers, personal interest, going into the realm of cult and control and manipulation. So there's the fallen guru, there is the cult leader, there is the integrous teacher. There is also the category of a scam from the beginning. There are things like that. So he was saying to really distinguish and discriminate and watch for certain criteria, so that you're not devoting oneself to something that is rotten. So this topic is in the mix too. At the same time, this idea of, okay, what's the role of the teacher then? What to look for? Also, there are certain, it seems like this idea that some parental dynamic with our parents as a child in a family of origin will inadvertently show up in the relationship with the teacher or the therapist. Let's throw the therapist in here too. So and that's maybe there's some necessary and healing dynamic for some time, but then this very dynamic that can be harmful and keep one stuck. So as well as this idea of in some teaching they say that the part in us that is seeking is the most important, precious part, and then actually it's important for that part to grow, and that part of seeking and wanting the truth or wanting to wake up to become more important than anything else. That's an important stage, and so that part is the most sacred. At the same time, a little later on the path, they say like, okay, that you are still seeking. That's why you didn't get it. You are still seeking. You need to drop the seeking. So there's like paradoxical, like, okay, well, seeking and then stop seeking, and then I'm not going anymore, but these non-dual circles, and there was even like a subtle ranking, like, hey, I'm no longer a truth seeker. I am a truth lover now, and I'm not seeking, but actually I am seeking, you know. So, and I'm definitely interested in your perspective. I know you are less of a devotional kind of guy. You are more like a rational, no bullshit kind of guy, not trusting things. So it seems like you took a little bit from here, you took a little bit from there. You didn't seem to be the, oh, I need to find a guru and devote myself and hold his hand and spend years with him in the same house. So maybe can you, here we go. Whatever feels right comes out of your mind now.
Yeah, I didn't take the path. Well, I was living in Indiana. For those who don't know, there's not a lot of teachers anywhere near Indiana, first of all. So if I would have had a teacher, it would have been a long distance thing where I did. I had teachers that I followed and watched on TV or DVD and read their books. But to be honest with you, because of my trauma I don't trust people. That was a very strong, and I realize now that that's part of what that was, is I just didn't trust. I couldn't trust any one person. That was my trauma, actually. So, but it actually served me well because then I didn't put my feet in the ground. Just that I would just extract what I could from each of the teachers. But then becoming a teacher, what I learned was that it's actually very valuable to have a teacher, because then I started to meet a few people who had awakening experience that they did not even want to happen. They had no context for it, and it was life-changing in a bad way, actually. It was, so I learned from those experiences, like those people would show up and they would be like, it's like all an illusion. There's no self here and it sucks. I've lost everything. And so I realized that those folks didn't have the context and the practices with a teacher. So they were left in no man's land, they didn't want this to happen. So for those of us who are seeking, it seems important for us to hear a teacher give context to what's going to happen to us or what might happen, so that when it happens, we understand what's happening. We put it in context. And without that, we can be lost. Yeah, so I definitely see the value of it. There's definitely cons to it. We'll probably get to that also. But it was very helpful for me to hear like Adyashanti say things like, he would say things like, well, until you've had that unity of consciousness experience, it can feel like you're still seeking, or still, and I needed that context to feel into that, what he meant by unity consciousness. And had I not had a teacher there, I wouldn't even know what is that. What is unity consciousness? So I needed that context. But even that, as I was approaching, so to speak, the awakening in myself, like seeing it, I had to really let go of a lot of the pointers, because even the pointers then would become like a fixation. So it's like leaving the teacher and the pointers behind and come into direct experience. You kind of have to just like, it's in a sense, like in a way, let go of a lot of it that's still playing up here. Just come into the experience, come into that experience. So in the end, I had to let go of the teachers and the pointers for me, because otherwise it's just mental.
Yeah, I can totally relate to this, the spiritual program, which I needed to make effort in order to develop the spiritual program, that you know, in the fourth way, even there are these short thoughts. We're supposed to kind of jumpstart ourselves into becoming more present, less checked out, and say things like be here now or something. And then in the non-duality, this counseling advice will change, will be more like welcome the totality of the experience, am I this, am I that, which is aware. So they seem like very holy thoughts, but then I can definitely see that it will just play by itself. And you know, as Buddha said, once you cross the river, you need to put down the raft. Don't carry the raft. Or yeah. So what are, you know, when we talk about seeking, I mean, as a young man, I was seeking enlightenment or immortality or something. I was seeking this or that, but then later I discovered that actually all of this I was actually seeking to be okay, seeking happiness, actually seeking contentment. And I thought that if I get enlightenment or get this, then I will be okay. So that was kind of simplifying when I got to Rupert and Francis, that they were saying that no, everybody, no matter what they are telling you, they want fame, company, they want to save the world, they want to save the children, they want more money, or they want enlightenment. Everybody underneath is the same impulse of seeking happiness, you know, harmony. And actually they were going further, saying that this is a divine natural impulse, that like our body mind, or, you know, it's called the Mihai-ness. It's a contracted modulation of the source, that, and this seeking is actually wanting to expand beyond the sense of feeling a separate, independent, autonomous object. So it is the source, yeah, wanting to discover itself. So what's your take on seeking, and when is it becomes an obstacle, or why would it become an obstacle?
Remind me on the obstacle piece, because what's coming, because I might forget.
Yeah.
What's coming up is like when I was seeking all the things in the world before I got to the spiritual surge. I think somewhere along the way, maybe those of us who become spiritual seekers, we realize that in the world, we're not going to be able to attain what we're looking for, because we're going to be taking the separation, the lack with us everywhere. And the worldly things are not designed really for us to experience the expandedness. Like the worldly things are feeding into the ego desires, the deficiency, the lack. So after a while, I think most of us, or many of us, we realize like, yeah, it's one mechanism, we're all doing the same thing, but in terms of the worldly things, there's no payoff ultimately. Like we start to, you know, that's important to see, because you can keep trying to find this and find that, fame, acknowledgement, approval, money, but if you live long enough, you realize it doesn't fill you up. And so that's what I noticed, like all the drugs in the world couldn't fill me up, and all the money and attention. So I think then there's the switching, at least the seeking then gets turned towards awakening, where there's the possibility of expanding into that, where there really wasn't the possibility much in the world. So it's a noble pursuit, even though it's the same mechanism everywhere, but at least it's a noble pursuit, because then you're actually seeking something that could open you up to that. Like in the world, you can't really get that. So yeah, that's how it felt. It felt like hearing the message of enlightenment was like, oh, so all this seeking that I'm already doing, like it could actually lead to a recognition, like not worldly money, attention, fame, acknowledgement, but an actual recognition where I experience that. That's what drew me in. Once I knew, that's where I needed a teacher. I needed a teacher to tell me, like, this is possible. This is an actual realization. Like, and I needed that to guide me towards that light. Yeah, I don't know. The other obstacle thing has a whole bunch of issues with it. You know, I don't know where we want to enter that conversation, but yeah, obstacle. Well, one of the obstacles is for me, I could see that until I could stand on my own 2 feet with this, like in my own direct experience, I was leaning too much on the teachers and their words and their experience. And so there had to be for me like a kind of a weaning off, like, I don't know what that's like for someone on a devotional path. That might actually be very difficult. And maybe it doesn't happen that way in devotional path, but the constant focus on other teachers was really pulling me away from my experience. I realized that, like going to YouTube all the time and reading was a way at some point of not being in my own experience. So I remember there was a time when I just started putting the books down and the videos and really not listening to the teachers, and then just coming, now I have all the pointers and the instructions. I can come right back to my experience. And that's where it happened, is when I kind of weaned myself off of that and went into my own direct experience. Their paths work, but that seemed to be really important. And I think one of the obstacles is that people don't know how to wean themselves off of someone else's experience, you know, and standing in their own.
Yeah, yeah. And to the previous thing that you said, I guess there's this, I guess, seeking of happiness in objects, as they call it, and including relationships or love. And I guess they were saying that a pretty advanced path is to have been disillusioned and discouraged, and to realize that over and over, I tried to get it there and I didn't get it. So it must not be there. The source of happiness must not be there. And I can see I still have maybe some residual of that towards relationship, you know, or that was a big thing for me. But yeah, then going to the teacher, yeah, there was this thing that he will give me the answer, he will give me the technique, and then that's the only way. And I guess in your case, I guess you were not too close with them, and you probably happened to find teachers that were pretty legit. In my case, I find this guy who ended up being a cult leader. I didn't know that. It took me 15 years or something, to 20 years to realize that. And it's not that it was a problem. I look back, I was like, man, it was great. I needed to be in a cult. Other people need to be in a cult. That was part of my path. But definitely that there were some, because of his not being legit and non-integrous, and with a lot of unprocessed stuff, with a lot of addictions and all kind of shadowy, dark, negative stuff. This was unknown to people. I knew that because I was close, but what was known, it was this thing that he was special. That's the thing. This may happen also with integrous teachers, like he's special, and the specialness, in spite of his efforts to be humble, at the same time, there was a special chair, special pillow, special clothes, special food, and everybody was treating him special. And somehow he was ordaining like that somehow only he's awake and other people are not awake, and somehow, yeah, this and somehow, yeah, this idea of that you need to hang out with him, that you need to hang out with him more, you need to attend more things, you need to hang out more, and this will be good for your evolution. And if you don't spend too much time with him, so that seems to be like a problematic. I mean, there can be many problematic things with false teachers, but like even with real teachers might be this identity as being a teacher. So I need to have students, I need to have them, I need to some kind of, I guess the spiritual thing becomes a addiction too. I notice it myself with YouTube and all that. And then if a teacher like that can enforce it, keep coming here.
I think that part of it is not just the unconsciousness of the seekers, it's in the teacher, because I've had that too. Like these deficiency stories can hang on. What we call deficiency stories, like sense of lack, is really unconscious. And it was hanging on for me after the awakening. And had I not gone into that, I could see how that would have karmically gone in a certain direction. Because if I feel still on some level deeply unlovable, then I'm going to act from that. I'm going to want people around me that will, to my consciousness, feed that story, even if I'm not aware of it. That's the thing, is the teacher could be completely unaware of it, acting on it. And the issue with that is that these deep strands of unconsciousness, you cannot assume that's because someone had an awakening experience that they've seen through all of that. You can't, you should ask. You should ask, don't assume. You should ask them, do you have stories of lack or deficiency operating? And if they're honest with you, you can have an honest discussion with them. But if they're not, they're going to hide that from you. They may be acting from it. So you want transparency, I would say. I would want transparency in my teaching, because if they're acting on unconscious deficiency, then they're karmically attracting seekers for their own personal benefit. And that's not about the truth or anything. That's about their own. And I've seen that within myself. So it's very easy to be operating from that and not see it as a teacher, first of all. And then to be telling yourself spiritual stories that rationalize it. Like, instead of looking at there's a deep-seated, unfulfilled aspect of yourself, like deficiency or lack, that's very, we'll spiritualize it and say things like, I'm the one that's enlightened, you need me. See, the deficiency story actually interprets it that way, makes yourself special. Why would you want to be special if you didn't think that you were deficient underneath that? Why would special even be interesting if underneath that you didn't feel deficient? So the specialness goes away when the deficiency is seen through, I think. The specialness is trying to make up for this sense of lack, I think. So if your teacher thinks that they're special, if you see that, you should ask a question. You should ask them questions. Like, where does that come from? Is this something that I see the specialness here? Is there something that I should be concerned with? Like, is there something that you haven't worked out? Because here's what I see is that, like, when people really do wake up and they really embody that, when they look at Adyashanti or Ramana, they just see an old man. That's all that they see. They don't see a lot of their projection. So I've done a lot of inquiry with people, like, where they're looking at Bentinho's teeth in a picture, and they think that the teeth are conveying something. And we just keep looking, and they recognize that they're putting their shadows and their projections on the teeth. Or Ramana's eyes, like in Ramana's eyes, there's this thing. But when you break it down, it's still their own projection. See, so in the end, it's like, that's just an old man there. And that's how it actually ends up looking. You know, it's like, you don't really see it that way anymore. that these people have this special glow. I think the specialness and the glow comes from our sense of lack and deficiency. I think if you really did the deep work, you probably wouldn't even be able to tell a teacher if you met them. I really think that, because you're not projecting and looking for it. You're not feeling deficient. So I don't know. That's just my experience with it. Like, if I were to meet with Adya, there wouldn't be any awe now, because the projection, I think, has been dealt with. But back in the day, there was this awe, like, you know, that I thought was coming from him. I didn't realize it was coming from me. Let me just tell you a short story. Like, there was a guy that I knew who, he's met this girl, and she had done some spiritual work, and he was really projecting onto her that she was enlightened and that she was really awake. And I was trying to say, well, that could be coming from your deficiency story and an attraction that you have towards that person. And when he deconstructed it, he just saw, oh, that was completely all my stuff. I think that's actually how it is with a lot of this, is we don't realize the moment we sit down with a teacher, we probably don't realize how much we've disowned within ourselves and are shadowing out from the very beginning. Like, we're already putting something on them. And then if the teacher isn't deconstructing that from their end, the projection continues. And if that never gets undone, you could be stuck there for a long time, actually. If that isn't really deconstructed, you could really be stuck in that. It's like any relationship. Your conditioning is now tied and fastened to that teacher. Just like it would be a woman, if there was something unresolved you couldn't let go, just in the same way.
With projection, I remember that I encountered this my first teacher. I was like 19, anyway, so even before I met him in person, there was one of the other older students who was, recognized by the teacher as being awake, and they came to Romania, and I was feeling very tense, and I felt like a strong impulse to be as present as possible. And there was this feeling that the guy sees me, he knows my thoughts. So I was projecting all of that. And then when I got to California here with my first teacher, again, there was this, felt stiff, I felt unnatural. I felt that I couldn't be myself, which was very much like how I felt with my dad. And at the same time, trying to be good. I was trying to be good and trying to get that I'm good. And then he tells me that I'm good. And this teacher actually was very good at that. I think he had this specialness. And then he will make the devotees feel special, and they will come back. And then there was some kind of state. There was some state of, even people, I know many people now, they left, they saw that it was all rotten, but they still this like, yeah, but there was these states we had there, and yeah, it's interesting. The mind can make all this shit up, everything. I mean, I went
therapist.
Go ahead. Yeah.
Go finish your thought. Go ahead.
Then I went to David Hawkins, actually, that he helped me through reading his books, videos, and meeting David Hawkins in person. I think was the first teacher who was, let's say, awake, enlightened, that was true. So just seeing the contrast, that helped me a lot. But even there, I was like, I don't know, I got there. I already read all these big books of David Hawkins and all these things. And I got into some room, and he wasn't even there. He didn't show up. And I was feeling this, my mind was quiet and very peaceful and very aware. And I was like, whoa, that's, and I don't know, that could be, maybe it's like if Jesus were in the other room, there's such big aura and deep love, maybe it irradiates. Yeah, maybe I'm making shit up. Yeah, it's possible, right?
Yeah. Well, we see that all the time in sessions, like just transmission. There is something to that, definitely. But when you break down the projections within yourself, the transmission is not, it's hard to explain it, but it feels like the transmission only happens when there's something to resolve within yourself. Like if you resolve things within yourself, even the transmission doesn't even work. You don't even feel it. Like if somebody were to walk in the room, you wouldn't feel that. I feel like part of it is because of the unprocessed thing, but yeah. When they say if you meet Buddha on the road, kill him, I think that it points to this in some way. It points to the fact that this is our projection towards Buddha nature would be our projection. So if you see that, that's your own projection in a way.
That's right. If you see the Buddha on the road, cut his head off, kill the Buddha, so you can assume your own Buddha nature.
Yeah. What I was going to say was, I've met through the years therapists who will look at the non-dual scene and scratch their heads, because they'll say, this is clearly like mom and dad issues. do they know that? And I'll say, well, not necessarily. That's not talked about in the spiritual scene, but they're like, interesting, because this is clearly what this is.
Yeah, actually, they call it, like Freud came up with it, and then some of the Freud ideas, they became outdated, but some remain, and they are active now. This transference, counter-transference. It's like the client, after some time of working with me, can put me on the pedestal. This will be the positive transference, that because I'm loving and unconditionally accepting and listening and all of that, so it puts I'm the ideal man or the ideal daddy. Or if people have other bad experiences, then they are like, oh, there can be some negative trigger from the client, which has nothing to do with Mihai, it has to do with their own stuff. And actually in the psychotherapy, that's like, hey, that's not a problem. Let's look at it. This is great that your daddy stuff come up to play out here,
Right,
yeah,
but you don't always see that in spiritual circles. You don't always see that invitation to, oh, that's great, let's work with that.
yeah,
Sometimes you do, but that would be helpful in spiritual circles when that is seen to now, oh, that's good, let's look at that.
yeah, yeah,
Some teachers
yeah.
do, some teachers really do. Yeah.
I remember once before I met you in person, I saw a video from you on YouTube where you were going into that, and you will be like, all right, we are going to be in silence and have eye contact. And you were like that. And I was like, wow, okay. So I kind of stayed with you, and I was starting to feel something. And I was like, wow, man, this God, this. Anyway, and then after about 5, and then you started to smile. And then you said this like, well, what happened? And I was like, and he said, nothing. I'm just here and you are there and you have all these stories basically. So that was very sobering. Um,
Mm.
oh yeah, and then you had another video which I like this, where you brought this, what they have in psychotherapy, in spiritual, the tendency to mummify and deify the spiritual teacher and put them on a pedestal, and now it's like a divine mother, I mean, or a divine father, and so that's, I mean, I felt this with Francis. I mean, I felt like a lot of energy, and although he's not doing that, I felt a sense of like, I finally some homecoming to, I don't want to belittle this. At the same time, basically the problem with that is that it maintains some sense that I'm less than, yeah, and so it perpetuates that I'm less than, I'm not there. He has all of these things. Can you talk a little bit about this?
And so in one way that helps. Go back to the teacher, and if the teacher is helpful, it brings you back, like the projection. Actually, like you say, there's a benefit in the seeking, because without it, you might not look to that person. Why would you go back if you didn't
Yeah,
perceive that they had something? It
yeah,
benefits us. It just seems like at a certain point, unless you're in a devotional path, at a certain point, that has to be broken down at a certain
yeah,
point when you're ready, because
yeah,
otherwise you continue to do it. Mummification,
yeah,
datification continue to happen, like you can't see it.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Psychotherapy somehow, if we were in a conflictual, the turmoil family, and then the child never got this experience of being seen and felt and accepted fully, they say that it's like deep wounding and it spins, something is unresolved. So actually it's they will have this missing experience with the therapist. Now for the first time, the male is safe, is not molesting them, listens to them, gives them good counsel, doesn't tell them what to do, it's honoring,
No
respectful.
judgments. Yeah.
Yeah, so it's almost like it can help to regain trust for the whole humanity. Have this experience with one person, it opens possibility for the rest. So that is, I can see, yeah, it is necessary. And with Francis, I could see, yeah, he seemed free, he could be himself, he didn't give a shit, he seemed he had clarity. I didn't have clarity, I wasn't free. So he did have certain things that were not available for me at that time, and I guess as those things became available for me at that later, I had less need to like go there. I mean, it's a long drive. It's
Let's see what something came up for me in that. Well, I'll say this: if everybody could just see, like when you're a little kid, you didn't get what you needed from your mom and dad. Like unless you had really conscious parents, which I haven't really met anyone who had really conscious parents yet. But theoretically, it wouldn't happen if you had conscious parents. But the rest of us, with unconscious parents, then we did not get the love, the attention, the approval that's just how it was. So because of the way we're wired as human beings, by necessity, then we have to go out into the world and try to find that. That's how our nervous systems work, whether we like it or not. It's just what's happening. So when we go, it's to get the job, to be good enough, you know, and dads is like to finally get the job, to get that job, that promotion, to get the girl, to find everything. Even when you get into a relationship, that you're still looking for mom and dad, aren't you? You're still looking for the love and attention. And so spirituality isn't any different. Any endeavor is like that, as long as you are in the ego consciousness. Anything that you're doing is wrapped up into trying to find what you didn't get from your parents. So spirituality is just not any different. It's just not any different. So you're going to come to that with the same thing. But now you have the opportunity to deconstruct it. And that's the difference in spirituality. You have the opportunity. So I would be looking to see whether your teacher is open to deconstructing that at some point. Because if not, they're just continuing to play into the same thing that's running everything everywhere.
Yeah, somehow he was, I mean, he was talking about this when people will give him a lot of juice and a lot of praise. And also, by the way, David Hawkins was saying things like, hey, when you are in some spiritual circle and the people are going like, ooh and ah, that's a red flag, you know, the oohs and ahs when they come.
Yes.
Anyway, so when there was a oohs and ahs for my previous teacher, he was like not even smiling, nothing. He would not say anything, and then he will move on, and then if the person continued, he will say something like, sweetheart, I'm just a guy, I fuck up, I take traffic tickets, I'm not, you know. So I could see that he was doing that. And also the way he acted, yeah, some non-specialness and some normal. Yeah, now everybody has, you know, yeah, everybody has stuff. So I could see that although he was saying this, that he's not perfect and he's a guy, at the same time there was in the background this thing that's speaking about sages, being a sage. And so there was this also in that I'm a sage. I mean, he wasn't saying I'm a sage, but there was implied I'm a sage. Sage meaning like enlightened or something. So then I'm like, yeah, okay, I can see that. I mean, yeah. And then when he had some shit that he did, or I'm not sure what he did or something, but that actually affected me somehow, because I was like, well, dude, I thought you are a sage, and now you are pulling this shit that I was doing this. I mean, fuck. So that rattled me a little bit, and then I pulled away. But later I was like, dude, he said it, man. He's like, dude, he fucked up like this. So I still have some issues in a way that I fuck up and I confess and I own and I try to do better and I speak about it. When I'm inadvertently in a position of a teacher with in a circle I'm doing, and but I get this transmission from you of being real and sharing about my shameful shit. I'm doing that, and I'm a little disappointed that my other teacher doesn't speaks business as usual, deep non-dual universal consciousness, but it seems like some elephant in the room. So I'm a little disappointed and bummed about that. And actually I had more people like ayahuasca shamans that I liked. I thought they are wonderfully pure and clean and they were my friends, and somebody tells me, dude, this guy now lied to his girlfriend and hid from this, said all this shit. And I'm like, oh God. But I don't know, I take it more like that's a human condition somehow.
Yeah, I feel like some of the scandals come because when somebody comes into a teaching, they don't say enough, the teacher doesn't say enough about their own unconsciousness. And so therefore people are allowed to project onto them this idealism. And so then that's a setup because the person is still human. So the projection along with the teacher not saying anything results in then you see their humanness that you didn't know was there, because just lack of transparency. If the teacher would have said, here are my issues. My issues is I repress anger. My issue is that I have this shame left over. I have this. Then at least that helps break down the projection. You know, this, oh, okay, you have that stuff. So when you start doing that, it's not a surprise because you told me.
Yeah.
But the issue is that because it's unconsciousness, sometimes the teachers aren't aware of it. That's the thing.
Yeah.
It's like, so they can't share what they're not aware of.
Yeah.
So we as seekers or people need to be more discerning and just assume then that your teacher is a human, they have unconscious bias. If you end up finding out that they're a perfect idealized sage, that's fine, but don't assume it, and work with your own projections. That way you might not be as shocked if their humanness shows up then, because you know, when you really believe that, the moment they do anything that doesn't look like the ideal mom and dad, then the trauma response is like, oh, that's hurtful. You know, I was misled. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, you know, this topic of transmission. I mean, you know, in the older religion or this tradition, that was like known. That's an ingredient. That's a crucial ingredient on the path. So the seeker or the student is spending time close to the teacher. And even Francis was talking about in Rupert that basically he says, I don't know what's happening. Actually, he didn't know. He said, although Francis has a lot of answers about everything, very scientifical, but he said, I don't know. I don't know what's happening, but that's what's happening. He felt it with his own teacher, just spending time with him and doing shopping and grocery and doing yoga and doing this. There's almost like the idea was that the nervous system of somebody who still believes to be a separate entity spends time with the nervous system of someone who stopped believing that, and there is some attunement, you know. So that was the closest explanation. Now Ramana, you know, Ramana, who seems to, there's like the only one that almost is still I have some idealized thing, like didn't pull any shit as far as we know, and he was very saintly. But he was also saying this, like, you know, the highest teaching is this silent transmission. And then if that doesn't work, then I'm going to ask you to do self-inquiry. And if you can't do that, then keep doing what you're doing, whatever, devotion, practices. But he was still, and people will come there, just sit, and he will be there. And so I think there's something to that. I think there's something to that. What's your take on this?
Definitely.
And did you
something
experience, I don't know, with Greg or with Ken Wilber or other people, or I guess even now we are spoiled with like YouTube and stuff?
Yes, with Adya and Eckhart and other teachers, just the silent transmission of just being in their presence allowed me to see that in myself, my own experience for sure. It just, for me, it wasn't enough, like Ramana said, there's some stuff I had to look at with inquiry, just like that. So the silence of the awareness wasn't enough. It's actually, he's saying the same thing we're saying now that I say that. It's like the awareness and then the inquiry. It's like, take a look. So I had to take a look because in the silence that was transmitted, my stuff was still operating like under the radar. So I had to do a little bit of digging around that. But yeah, generally, I think that's a very powerful thing. But there's so many silent retreats going on all across the world, and not necessarily a lot of people waking up though.
Yeah, it's like I mean, I went to 1 week, 2 week with Francis and in the house there and the people, and also there's his wife, and there was nothing special, but after a few days there was a sense of heightened causeless happiness, and that all my problems kind of diminished a lot. And then also when it was over, I didn't have this, oh man, I need to go back now. I was like, oh, I'm looking forward to go back to my life now. But still deeply seated pattern they were still there, and I needed to do somatic inquiry that was not offered there and was actually discouraged there, in order to not have this come and go like this, you know, states of the like high of the retreat and then go back to usual. Yeah.
Yeah, I used to call that the Satsang crash or the Satsang syndrome, where you're
Yeah.
sitting in silence or transmission. But it's a safe environment. It's good. It's a safe environment though.
Yeah.
And so you come back home where it isn't safe anymore, and mom is calling, and then your old unconscious stuff comes to the surface that couldn't come to the surface during the silence because those people weren't around.
Yeah.
That's why I'm a big fan of integrating life and spirituality as much as possible. Bring the silence into your life throughout the day, like rest as that, as the awareness, inquire. Then I think you don't get the satsang syndrome. The crash doesn't happen when you integrate it more. This is my feeling about it.
Yeah, actually, I'm doing the circles, doing KI and other things, combining these teachings with processing, and I don't talk anymore so much about this, which was bread and butter for fourth way, like bringing these presence practices to everyday inconspicuous moments. And so I can see that there is tendency now, maybe in the people, they come, or that there's, okay, I'm doing meditation, which is good to do, just silent meditation for some time. It's good because one can go deeper and whatever. And then I do processing. I do processing and then I do meditation. But I feel the need to bring this. It's not okay. Meditation is good and processing is good. They're all very good. But then, what about the rest of the time? And actually, in non-dual circles, they didn't have this kind of. You need to have reminders, because we I mean, unless you're like already resting as awareness effortlessly, we forget. And so you need reminders. You need all kind of stuff. In a world that is asleep, everybody, you know. So I will kind of do that. Maybe it's another topic.
I think that's where the teachers are helpful, is the pointers that they give that you can sort of incorporate throughout the day. That helped me a lot. Like just listening to Adya in my mind, or Eckhart reminding me, because in the day, just the unconsciousness rules, you know, in the beginning, like there's no awareness in your life. And so just hearing the teacher's pointer would be a reminder to come back or to take a look again. So that was very helpful. But then again, and then once I recognized the presence in my own experience, though, then that's when for me, the pointers had to be let go of, like, because it's just clutter at that point. And that's another stage of it that happens.
Also I could see that the new YouTube is like a drug, like a subtle drug, because underneath what's happening before, it's a subtle sense of lack, a subtle sense of boredom, a subtle sense of something is missing. And then I can go to weed, or I can go to a video, you know. So that's kind of like an addiction. Hey, but let's stay with this transmission, because I think there's this element of like this transmission, as Ramana was talking, or as this, but I think this actually transmission is very happening all the time, I think. And actually there was this idea of mirroring neurons. We have these mirroring neurons, the science discovered, which are responsible for feeling other people's things, and so responsible for empathy, and that are happening in child. I mean, that's why, you know, the baby tiger imitates the mommy tiger, and then I imitate and mold myself how my father was, although I didn't like that. You know, so we are becoming it, you know. So especially if we like somebody a lot, we are starting to have those mannerisms. So anyway, so transmission, I think there are different ways. Like my first teacher, he had addictions and shopping, and like I could see that I ended up like that. I mean, I don't say it's his fault, but I was into shopping and all kind of like love and sexual and always more, and somehow that went away. I stopped hanging out with him and I did some other work. You could see with Francis, it's not just the non-dual transmission, although I think that yeah, hanging out with him, listening to some guided meditations, that I got it somehow about this Buddha nature, you know. But it's an important transmission was this thing that I could see that he's following his enthusiasm, like, and he would talk about it. He was like, dude, do what you want to do. Ask yourself at this moment, is this what I want to be doing, or I'd rather be doing something else? I'm meditating now. Do I really want to meditate, or rather just stop meditating, do something else? So that was a big permission. And also hanging out with him, I could see he's doing that. He'll do satsang, he'll go, he'll do there, he'll do that. It was free. Now come to you, you are real. So there's transmission of realness and the transmission of non-hiding. Although I know you said you had this, I have to hide, but I guess you went for it. So, you know, that's another thing. And I'm much more like that. And then I do my own events and circles and clients, and they are appreciating that, you know, when actually I was like hiding a sneaky bastard myself. So, you know, somebody is nasty and mean, there's, you feel that. So I think this transmission has many levels.
I think we're dealing with it with our we space inquiry too. Like people may not know, but with our we space inquiry, what we're doing is we're picking up on how we pick up on other people's energy and we're repulsed by it or attracted to it. And we do work on how we're repressing emotion, just for people who are listening, and how that repression of emotion creates that issue with the person's energy. And so angry people, there is a certain kind of transmission for us. Like if you hang around an angry person for long enough, you might actually start feeling it more. Or if you hang around someone, anyone, or so I feel like the transmission is happening, like you say, always with emotions and all kinds of things. When you get into a cult, I can imagine there's a transmission happening. Like, you know, not just
specialness.
Yeah, but also all the people are modeling this energy and this thing, and then you come into this and you pick that up, pick up how they're doing it. So it's happening all the time. Here's another thing is that you mentioned modeling is, it's not just energy transmission, sometimes behaviorally we're mimicking people. So when I watched Eckhart, he was just acting a certain way out there and talking like this. And so I actually modeled that, you know, so we're picking up things all the time, I think. And definitely true in spirituality. I feel like with this, I mean, hopefully when you pick up the realness thing, that was speaking to something in you, like, you know, something within you wasn't authentic. And so you were attracted to that maybe. So it's, that's where we find the transmission. We're attracted to things that we don't find within ourselves. I guess.
Yeah, you know, because of my first experience with the first teacher, after many years, I guess I didn't want to be a teacher, but I didn't think like this. It was subconscious. I was like, no. So that's why I like this therapist, because it's a clear container with rules and ethics. But then because of doing groups and because actually I do love to teach and talk about these things and explain, I ended up in some circles where I was the founder and in charge, but I was holding back being the teacher. So I was like being the teacher, trying not to be the teacher, which is very ineffective, you know, because subconsciously I didn't want to be like him, you know. So anyway, I guess I had some other transmissions, so I could see that actually it's possible to teach and still be a normal guy, and to be real, and to be deep, and to not be perfect, and to share about my last transgression. And yeah, that's very wonderful, actually. It's nice.
And what if all along that's how teachers were, that they had transgressions, that they had unconscious that
Yeah.
but now we're just talking about being honest.
Yeah. Yeah.
What if that's what it's all about? Right? Because we just talked about the lack of transparency. What if all those folks had those things at various degrees, but just not telling us? We were led
Yeah.
to believe something. So maybe the model of the new teacher will be that more
Yeah.
of more transparent, telling about your transgressions.
Yeah.
Yeah, that feels like it might be a way to go.
Yeah. Yeah. I also like this, I mean, I get it in a devotional path or other things might be different, but I like that. I see it in your community or with you. It was in the Francis Rupert thing that, and I think it was in a Francis's teacher, this thing like, hey, I am not your teacher, actually. I am bringing to your own inner teacher. I'm a friend on the path. So there was this thing, we are friends on the path, which I like that. And it seems to be happening. I don't know, like when I met you, I felt with you the most. Usually I'm stiff and I try to be good and I'm trying to whatever. But with you, I felt like normal, like with another, like a friend. I think that's much more beneficial. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we definitely want friends on the path who can help us, like, because
Yeah.
it's like you don't want to invite a plumber over who's just a friend. You want a plumber who knows how to fix the drain.
Yeah.
But yeah, just an equalizing energy, like there's not higher than, more special than that. That's the
Yeah.
thing, is that not one up and one down you, but
Yeah.
but still there may be more skill that a
There's more
teacher has to
expertise.
offer. That
Yeah.
doesn't make them higher, right? It's just they have
Right.
something to offer, like the plumber.
Right. Yeah. Like that. Like, okay, you are lost in the woods. I'm lost in the woods, and the teacher got out of the woods, went up the mountain, and there's there a nice view, and he knows the way because he got out of the woods. He already felt the demons, and so he's a friend who he at the same time he knows more the territory. That's the thing. Yeah. Yeah. What about this, in Buddhism, and I think in many teachings, there is this element of you need the Buddha nature, which we have inside, and then the teaching, the Dharma, the teaching. So we need to have a wise teaching. Like that is the map is like you need to go out of the woods, you need a map. And ideally the map is not old, is not corrupted, is not twisted. It's a correct map. And then, so the teaching, and you need the Sangha, like some community of like-minded people who are focusing on the same goal. I really benefited a lot from that in my life, and I maybe see that it was also a projection of my, in my house I have a lot of pictures of teachers and stuff, lots of pictures of teachers from the past, and I could see now that I was trying to recreate a family. So the spiritual community was the idea of family, so I had this, I guess, transference, and I was trying to find a family. But I think there's another, for you, was it important for you on your path, this idea of Sangha? And definitely it's happening now. It wasn't. Yeah.
Yes, I see the value of it. That's what we have with the members area in the community, is people coming together, doing the same work. We also have a context, like you said, there's a map and there's a community there. So there's also the experiential work. So it's all there. But I wasn't personally drawn to communities. I don't know why.
Well, you had that thing with your friends, right? The friends kind of, they went, they were best friends. So
yeah, so I was a loner basically growing up. And so I think that's what it bled into spirituality for me, is just to sort of go alone with it. But as I've woken up from some of the bullying conditioning, then I can see the value of community, and I can definitely see it. But I can see then, but having not had that, I can really see when people need the community from their trauma. Just like I didn't want a community for my trauma, I can see where it comes from. So it'd be nice for us to have a different kind of community with the members area where people really do the deep work so that they don't feel like they're tied there. Like that's what I want, is a community where people feel free to come and go.
Mm-hmm.
And even though they like being there, they don't feel obligated. Like somehow if they can do the work so they can treat it as a really,
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what the word is, but it's the opposite of cult, whatever that is. If we
Mm-hmm.
can foster an environment that's the opposite of that somehow, or it doesn't have that,
Mm-hmm.
that's inviting. I'm interested in that kind of community.
Yeah. No, I actually with the KI community, the members area, it's virtual, completely virtual. So that's a first time, and somehow, in spite of the fact that it's virtual, and I haven't met many people in person, I feel a strong, deep connection and a sense of, sense of belonging, sense of resonance, and also when I do interact online with one of those people, I feel I know them. It's a sense of a family. I guess I'm getting that sense of the family. Yeah, in the I keep coming back to fourth way because it seemed like it talked about some principles that are valid across all paths. That's what I like about it. And in the fourth way, they were saying that in order for one to make steady progress on the process of awakening, it's tough because we forget and we get distracted and we lose our initial enthusiasm and we are going to deviate without knowing we deviated, and we think we are still going on track, or we fall asleep believing to be awake. And so they were saying that one needs three engines, three lines of work, because the first line was just oneself. I don't know, meditating, I'm studying, I'm applying this, I'm doing KI, I'm doing whatever, self-remembering, me with me. He said, well, this is not enough because you will get into like a lull. Also, you can't see yourself. Anyway, the second line was to work with others, a teacher, a therapist, a circle. You work with others about these things, so that will give you additional jolts and more stuff. And if you have both lines, there are more chances that you remember more often and you don't forget. And even they say the third line is this kind of working for the school or some service. It's not selfish. For this service could take many forms, but anyway, so I can see why, coming to a meeting that acts like this second line and the community, so ensures a continuity of focus direction.
100%. I didn't know about that in the fourth way, but I feel that same thing in KI. We say that, we call it self-support. You're looking on your own, you're practicing and then working with others, and you know how well that is with KI. It's working with others. Yes, I do think those were principles that I saw even in 12 steps in other communities.
Yeah.
That's pretty,
yeah.
I don't know if it's universal, but I agree that that's important.
Sometimes I have people come to me, they'll be doing well for some time and they stop coming to me. And then they come to me after some months and I was like, how are you doing? They said, I'm not good. And I try to ask them what's happening. And then I'm like, hey, are you, I'm asking their lines of work and they are not doing, they're not going to the group, they're not going to meditation. So there's just, I'm like, well, of course. And of course, this is like more like an initial stages or medium stages. I think at some point, this fire for awakening becomes so strong that's unstoppable. But I think this is more like when the fire is more like a spark or just a little something needs to be maintained.
And some people are even losing interest in enlightenment period because of all the things that have happened, like scandals, and also because they've bypassed for so long that they're just getting fed up with the same thing. And that can actually bring a lull in things. When you give up on that, you lose that fire and you're kind of lost for a while. I've seen some people who are lost. That's unfortunate because the awakening is a real thing. Like that non-dual realization is a real shift. And so, it's unfortunate that because of what's happening among people and personalities, that people get turned off from that.
Yeah, yeah.
But yeah, I don't know what to say about that. I mean, luckily some of those folks, they're finding some fire with KI because it's giving them access to certain things that they bypass. So the fire comes alive for certain people. But I can imagine there's a lot of people out there floundering like that because they're just lose the fire for various reasons. Here's another reason that people lose the fire. This is quite natural too, where it's like you do some spiritual work for a while and then you start feeling better. And then you go back out to the world, you know, because like now I'm equipped, I'm gonna go back out, I'm gonna do this again. But they go back out and they find the same suffering. And so they've lost the fire for a while. So some people lose the fire because, again, they start feeling better. They go back out into the world. This can happen several times for people. And then they come back. And when they come back, sometimes they do or they don't have the fire again. So what I also notice is as the deficiency story starts to wind down for people, that was driving the seeking, and then that can sort of take the fire out of things. And then people actually get into a place where they're not kind of really recognizing their true nature, but all the motivations to do anything. And so now they're just the fire for anything is for seeking, for looking for anything going. That's fine because they might be getting close to recognizing their true nature, and they're just kind of seeing, you know, that a lot of the stuff that they were doing, including the practices, were coming from the seeking. So there's a part of it where fire burns out because you're discovering your true nature. And so all that activity, you know, that you were doing starts to bounce. So there's different places. It's hard to talk about it in one way. Fire dying out.
Yeah, wow. Actually, I just remembered now a topic that I wanted to talk to you and I forgot to put it down. And it was about embodiment. Yeah, about embodiment and what is that supposed to mean? And actually, like usually embodiment can happen after recognition of our true nature, or actually embodiment should happen before. Okay, so this is what I want to talk to you about, but we need to leave it for another time. Yeah. Yeah, I just remembered this one now. Yeah, you know, in the David Hawkins was saying that the worst impact of a cult and a false teacher, besides, let's say, person killing themselves, let's say, but let's say next level down would be that they are disillusioned about spirituality and about awakening and about God. They're like, fuck this is bullshit. I'm just going to be a normal person. You know, and he was saying that's a big pity, you know, because of that experience, now the whole thing is now not to be trusted.
I've seen that actually many times in people, and it takes sometimes years to come back, even if people become interested. And when they come back, it's different because you've been damaged so much that themselves back into it, and they're very suspicious, obviously. So, but some people don't come back, and it is kind of a pity because they did have that fire, and then someone, because of the cult, just stuffed the fire out of them.
Yeah. So maybe last thing here I think initially when you were working with clients before you got into KI, there had many people coming to you and you were working to dismantle the seeking identity, which appeared to be veiling them from finding. And it seems these were serious seekers, you know. So how would you go about that process? Let's say, I don't have that so much, but how would you, somebody comes to you and it's like, yeah, you know, so can you explain about that process of dismantling or helping the person dismantle the seeking identity, and is that helpful? Because then I don't know. So tell me about that.
It's a lot of it is deconstructing the deficiency story. And so that's helpful in the sense that that's driving a lot of the suffering, period, let alone the seeking. So I would focus a lot there with like the unfindable inquiry, or where they would think that that's them, this story, that story. I would just point and show them that that's not. But a lot of it back then, Mihai, was just me sitting with people. And as they would bring things up, I would just point to them and have them see it, and then point back to the awareness, so that there was no place to land really on. That's all that it was like pointing to someone. And then I developed inquiry, so that because I thought that then people could actually do it on their own. They wouldn't be so dependent on me. That was one of the reasons for it. Like, well, I'll show you, I'll go do it. But okay, through the years, I've learned different of the things that we're talking about now. Like, I didn't understand all the deeper unconsciousness back then. I didn't understand how trauma was playing into it, repression. So I have a different view of it now. And and this is a tricky subject, because the seeker energy is valuable, as we say, on the path to keep the fire alive. But when you get to the deeper somatic repression and trauma work, it can kind of stir things up a lot and create problems, as you know. Like if you go in like a bull in a china shop, trying to get rid of everything at the repression level, you can really overwhelm yourself and get frustrated. So it's some sort of balance. Like, we want the fire to be there, but we don't want the fire to be fueled by this real strong sense of lack or deficiency. Going to create all that. Yeah. So we're working with it with other things now is what we're doing. We're saying, yeah, the deficiency here, but there's also this other unconsciousness here, the shame, all this other stuff driving it. So be looking at all that, because if you just look at the deficiency story, the seeker, you have other things to process, but then you don't have any fire in you. You're just like, there's nothing to seek, there's nothing to do. And so then you have still unprocessed stuff. So we try to introduce all that in the beginning. Like, there's a bunch of unprocessed stuff. It's not just identity that, there's stuff driving all.
Okay, so you are saying from your experience, the seeking was fueled by some subconscious hidden deficiency story that the person was trying to transcend into some higher, better state. That is, you got a glimpse and then it fades away, and then I lost it, and somehow they were not aware of the deficiency story. They were playing with these spiritual toys here and spiritual thing, advanced stuff. Yeah, I see this a lot. I saw that when I was going to the non-dual circles. It's all about very high end, the creme de la creme of this deep mental teachings, and nobody was saying and talking about their stuff. Yeah. For me, I could look back. It was for a long time. This, I guess, it's garden variety misunderstanding that if I engage in these practices, fourth way practices, I will get to this place where there's no misunderstanding, that there is no thought, and there will be a special state where it's like very special, which I didn't experience ever, or maybe a little bit. And then I will stay there. And so this, I guess making awakening as a state, as a very juicy, yummy state. Francis will call it to have some spiritual big piece of chocolate in your spiritual mind, And so, so that didn't work. And then, so, for me, that was the seeking of that state. And then somehow that's not like normal.
Yeah. So I just help people deconstruct that stuff. Like, have an idea about what it's supposed to look like, even though that might be helpful in the beginning to keep the fire alive. That becomes the culprit that continues to make them feel like there's something wrong with them. So if you deconstruct that up, like for yours, it is this state of no thought, but for others, it might be like bliss, happiness, or others, it's like no pain or whatever. So, but what I noticed, that object is being created by the deficient self-identity. And when you and when someone sees through that, object goes away. They're both connected. So, and then that renders someone right here in awareness with, you know, because you're deconstructing that thing there. It shows them the presence by doing that. But I've seen that so many times through the years that I no longer think that these things, these objects in the future, are just being drummed up for no reason. They're coming from the sense of lack and deficiency directly. So again, as soon as you that goes away. So therefore, if that state shows up, that's fine, but you're not fixated on that and seeking that. You're in awareness, living. And so that's where we discover that state in awareness, is like with being it, with everything, things can go quiet. But if you're focused on this thing out here, that's probably why you weren't recognizing it, because this thing out there.
And the fourth way was introduced to me wasn't non-dual. It was like me as a separate dude. I'm trying to get to this presence, which is special. Anyway, so the non-dual kind of cured me of that.
And so, just for anybody listening, that's how we would. One way we would do it is like, if I get there and I'm special about who I am now, and you'll see it directly. I'm not special. I'm not something. And so there's the creating that object.
It was fueled by I guess I had the transmission of repression from being raised in a communist, post-communist kind of totalitarian, a lot of pain. And so my ancestors didn't have tools and they had to repress to be strong. So there was emotional repression. And then, so when something will come up, like a feeling of vulnerability or a feeling of irritation or a feeling of sadness, that was like, whoa, so I will bring all the army of spiritual tools to even that out, you know, separate the, you know, there was this thing called separation, like to separate the sense of oneself from the discomfort, which I think that's true ultimately, but there was totally a strong agenda. It was agenda of, because Hawkins was talking about that the highest states is like imperturbable. So I was like, I want that, you know, which is very similar, like imperturbable, like not feeling anything unpleasant, nothing unpleasant, you know. So, and it seems like it's not like that. It's like that one can be awake, and it's actually that the one will feel everything thoroughly, fully, everything, and it's not a problem.
Right, but the very fact that I'm putting an object out in the future in which I won't have to feel that stuff is part of the repression and the suppression of the feelings now. So if there is available, how are you going to reach that by avoiding the feeling? So what I tell people is, again, don't be confused, because your object is how you're resisting emotion. Your future object is how you're continuing to repress and suppress emotion now. And if you can see that, then you'll deconstruct that and you get to the business of feeling everything now and just being with things now.
I can see that actually he's right with the imperturbability, but it's because listen, now I take this KI or vulnerability inquiry that we talk about, which are very basic, simple things to make sure that I'm really conscious of the smallest feeling that, or a cocktail of feelings that are not clear. So I'm doing this often now. It's why I drive. So this I like, it's very practical. I drive and I feel a little, and I'm like, oh, I'm sad. I'm not sad. Oh, I'm sad. Oh. Anyway, and now it's just like, I don't know, 25 seconds. And then it goes away. And so I do this often, so I can see that, okay, now I'm allowing this. I have allowed this for some time. I'm not resisting them for some time. I have gone into the shark tanks, like where this like really unpleasant, unwanted emotion. So now that's through imperturbability, meaning that, hey, yeah, it's unpleasant, but it's okay, it's no big deal, you know. I'm not trying to not feel it. Yeah.
Right. So has your object, whatever you were chasing, has that diminished now that you're feeling more? That's my question, because that
Yeah,
would go along.
I'm not, basically, I'm not chasing a special state. I'm not chasing imperturbability. I'm not chasing no self. I guess what I would like, man, I would like to live fully. And I cannot do that, but to as fully embodied in all aspects of my life, including relationships and love and like, and I think that's a continuum or ever growing into that. So that's what I would like. And it's not later, like, okay, now I'm with you now, and then I'm going so to, but this can every moment Zen now, right now, just now, but fully with feelings and with spontaneity and expression. I know, I noticed that you are nodding approvingly.
Well, doesn't sound like you have a strong object out there. It sounds like yours feels more alive here in the moment than an
Yeah,
object that you're chasing.
yeah.
I was just making the point, if you start feeling and allowing everything truly, you might lose the attachment to the outcome. So that's what I meant. Like, that's what I kept seeing through the years, is that when folks were able to feel and be with things as they were, their objects in the future started going away, because that was just there as like some sort of to feel it or something. It's like, you know what I mean? I'm going to put that out there so that I won't have to, but then they end up realizing, no, I actually have to, because that's knowing everything.
Yeah, I can see this like living fully. It's kind of nice. It's clean, but it's still abstract. And it implies that, okay, if I were to live fully, how would it be like? You know what I mean? Then I was like, huh. But I can see that live fully, one needs to feel fully, whatever, shame, loss, loneliness. Yeah, that's a nice new connection, which is obvious, to feel fully and then live fully.
Totally, because if you think about how much emotions and sensations color our life, moment by moment. Like, if you're feeling sad, it's sadness. The world is sad. Life is sad. If you're feeling happy, it's happy, joyful. So how could you not include emotions in fully allowing life, because they're coloring?
Yeah. Hey, I must say that, there's not a topic here, and we'll probably have another topic about this repression work, man. It's amazing. Undoing the repression of feelings and the repression of voice and repression of action, repression of authenticity, repression of undoing of all of that. It's not talked about much in spirituality nor in psychotherapy. And I think that's much more happiness comes out of doing that work. Out of our innate happiness will shine forth. And I can see I was working on certain areas, and I can see effects on all other areas. Like, I took a vacation, I'm taking a 6-week vacation, going somewhere. And before it didn't cross my mind. I was always working hard all the time, weekend. Anyway, so I can see, like, I'm in a place and I'm doing some work, and some dude comes and is a little weird. I will be a little weird. I'm like, dude, I need to focus. Can you give me space? It just comes like this. I almost want him to have a problem. I almost so there's, I don't know, that kind of shy, controlled, good boy, spiritually superior, shut down. That's kind of dying or something. And there's this other guy that well, is much better. Yeah, more living more fully.
And it does. It does. I've experienced that since the repression work, like much more joy and happiness. And I've been trying to put words to it, but you've did a good enough job of it. Like when you hold something back, you hold the rest of it back. And how can
Yeah.
or some of it back we appreciate and
Yeah.
if you're holding all that back, like that makes sense to me now, but
Yeah.
you can't see it until you do other
Yeah.
things. A hidden pressure. You can't really see that one until you do the work.
And that's a transmission of not being repressed. It's very rare. Yeah. All right, Scott, you feel like there's something else you'd like to add to this episode?
Well, just where people can find this Kiloby members area, go to kiloby.com, scroll to the top,
Yes.
drop.
Yeah.
And then that's where the work comes alive. We're talking about it in these interviews, and I'll talk about what we're doing the work and showing people how to do the work.
Right. That's a good addition, because also many people I work with, I don't necessarily want to, hey, come to Kiloby, but like I am part of that platform, and I find that I'm getting all these 2 lines of work at least strong, and there's an opportunity to share deeply, and that's a lot of resources, is very extremely affordable. And so if you are intellectually, philosophically curious about what we're talking about, yeah, we are now talking loosely about some very detailed kind of awareness-based somatic work. Kiloby inquiries, there's different levels that as a just seeker of happiness or as a clinician, I found it extremely valuable. And maybe one day, Scott, you can have a KI members area kind of retreat somewhere in person.
Yes.
Think about that in the future.
Yeah. For Hawaii, I'm thinking Hawaii.
Hawaii? Yeah. Hawaii. All right. Oh, actually, I have a contact there, very strong contact that he has a farm, and I don't know. Let's stay in touch.
All right.
All right, Scott.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.